All right, welcome back, everybody. In this video, I want to kind of wrap up our work with this data frame DF that we've been working with, that we created from scratch, just to kind of illustrate how we can slice and extract data from a data frame. We've been doing that with indexing using row and column indices. And there are other ways that we can do this. So I want to talk about a couple of last points about extracting with indices before we move on to some other topics in this notebook. And so if you want these code cells to run and you're just opening up this Colab notebook, you're going to get some crashes because you need to define this data frame df if you haven't done that. And one easy way to do that is to just click the run before command. This will run all of the code cells prior to this one, and that will define this data frame df. And if you're curious what that data frame looks like, then you can run this head command. And so here's this like really small data frame that we're working with. It just has 4 rows, 4 columns of data, and this is our kind of index column, this first one over here. And another way that you can extract multiple column names, multiple columns, is by the name. So, over here, we were indexing multiple columns by the column number. These columns also have names, right? We gave them names, and we can also refer to those columns by their names. So in this case, if I wanted to extract 3 columns of data from this data frame, say I wanted to extract the ID, color, and past columns, I could refer to them either by their numbers 1, 3, and 4, and that's going to pull off the ID, color, and past columns, or I can refer to them by their names, ID, color, and past. These 2 commands that I have here, they're going to do the same exact thing. They both pull off the same 3 columns. And since I haven't identified anything about the rows, they're going to keep all rows of the data frame and just those 3 columns. Okay. And I don't have any row names. So as far as the rows go, I can index those just using the row number for the indices. But for the columns, I can use either the numbers or I can use the column names. So I have those 2 options. And another nice thing that I can do is notice in this case, my original data frame, this had 4 columns. And in this case, I wanted to keep 3 of them, ID, color, and past. Another way of thinking about that, if you're like a glass half full or a glass half empty sort of person, looking at it from the flip side of things, I could also think about this as I want to exclude the measure column. So I want to slice this data set by removing the measure column, right? So there's 2 ways to think about it. I want to just include ID, color, and past, and that will just include these 3 columns. Or I could also think about this process as removing the measure column. And so I can extract rows and columns by excluding things, and it works very, very similarly as we described above, but I just put a minus sign in front of the indices, and that indicates rather than include the rows or columns with these indices, if I put a minus sign before it, that means remove these rows or columns with these indices. So for example, a DF with a -6 for the row index would mean keep all rows except for row 6. And then a DF with nothing for the row, but a minus before a vector of 3, 6, and 11 for the columns would mean let's keep all of the rows and let's keep all of the columns except for column 3, 6, and 11. And if I want to exclude a continuous range of rows or columns, then I can do the same sort of thing. I use the colon notation to say, okay, we want to take a continuous range of rows, say 2 through 4. And the way that I would exclude them is I can put that inside of a vector. So I can put like that inside of the C function to make that a vector. And then I just exclude that vector of indices with the negative sign. So I have minus C, and then inside of parentheses 2:4, and that's going to exclude all of the rows starting and including 2 up to and including 4. And I could do something similar for the columns, and this would exclude all columns with indices starting at and including 4 up to and including column 7. So if we're still working with our data frame df, and I'll just print it out here so we can see it again, df minus 2, that's just going to remove the measure column, but keep all of the rows and all of the other columns, ID, color, and past. df minus C1:2, this is going to remove all rows from 1 up to 2. And maybe to make it more clear, I could like go up to 3, right? And this will remove 1, 2, and 3. In other words, this will only keep row 4, for example. Okay, so we'll stop here. This kind of ends our part about indexing, extracting using indices with this data frame df. We'll talk about how we can extract parts of a vector. That's actually a little bit easier. And then we'll move on and talk about how we can import external data from a comma-separated file and work with a much larger data frame, and talk about how we can do more complicated indexing using logicals and other things later on in the rest of this module. Thanks, everyone.